ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say hello and welcome. Welcome to another exciting edition of the program, Ashford Garley Live. We come to you tonight from Lansdowne, PA. And folks, let us sure hope you're having a great time tonight. How was your weekend? First off, I'd like to give the Almighty God the praise. Some are in the hospital, some are in wheelchair, some can't find food to eat. You made it possible for us tonight. You've given us divine strength, wisdom, energy, good health. We owe you a debt of gratitude. We want to thank you for making it safe for us to be here tonight. Speak through us to your people. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen. With that said, folks, make no mistake and throw no joke on this one. This is yours truly, the brother who doesn't eat iron, but he's definitely stronger than a lion, the medicine of the microphone, the golden voice of Liberia, the mastermind, the doctor of love, Africa's media doobie-doo extraordinaire. As for the giant, the now you know me Garley. Welcome. And I'd like to introduce our administrator, Mrs. Letty Brooks Roberts, and she would then, in turn, tell us about the way forward tonight for the show. Mrs. Roberts, please unmute the microphone and go right ahead.
Good evening, Ashford. How are you?
I'm better than good. To God be the glory.
Awesome. Hope you had a great weekend.
I had a fantastic weekend.
I know I missed the show on Friday. I had a bittersweet weekend as well. Had family and friends over. However, it was for, a funeral. So, yeah, it was good and bad. But we give God the glory. Want to welcome each and every one of you tonight. Good evening and welcome to another exciting edition of Bridge Radio Africa with your host, Ashford, the Giant Garley. We are coming live to you from Bridge Radio Television, Bridge Radio YouTube channel, and our Instagram, bridgeradio.com. Grab your drink or snack of choice as we bring you the country hunger divide. We have a few guests for tonight. As promised, we'll have a series of discussions on this topic. So before we begin, we want to give you our house rules. Here they are. Please be respectful of each other. Please be respectful of our host. And most importantly, please be respectful of our guests as we bring you a thought-provoking evening of this issue that has plagued our country. So tonight, as you get comfortable, we ask that you please be respectful in what you write. What you write is just as important as what you say. So make yourselves comfortable, grab your drink, your snack of choice, and let's go to the conversation. Back to you, Mr. Garley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. And folks, don't be selfish tonight. Share the video, invite a few friends so that we can all together have a blast tonight. I'd like to say hi to Wadi Constance out of Damascus, Syria, Florence Taylor, A.B. Bobley, Philip Paswad of Hong Kong is in the building tonight. We'll also see Human Throw Krenga out of Minnesota. Sunshine Girly Moore is in the building as well. And we'll also see Kristen Simpson. Chris, how you doing, my brother? It's been a minute. Card Alvin Pennell is also here. Fredje Monjul is in the building as well. Vanin Hardy, Abu Bebito Fofana, Mesdames et Messieurs, mon patron, bonsoir. Martha Doki is here. Muriel Mason is also here as well. And you can throw this in. Hi, my beautiful sis Letty Brooks Roberts. Happy
Oh,
holidays. And
thank you.
Edwin Freeman, Aliyah, Beko, Moen is also here tonight. And I see the Vida Peabody and Sampi Pro is tuning in from Toronto, Canada. And I also see Adaman, B. Thompson, Wisdom King. It says, he said, good morning, guys. And I see KW Code, watching from Texas. Richard Dix, my friend and brother from Fargo, North Dakota. We hang out a few years ago on the oil field. And I see Alfonso's Moset, Helen Noah, Emmanuel White, Maron Sandy is here. She said, that now you know me, Ashford the Giant Garley. Makina is also here. She said, hello, Mr. Garley. Abu Billy is on here. And I also see Fomba D. Connett. Death Day Noir is watching. And Jerry Thier, Auntie Ruby is also watching tonight. And folks, I just want to, show some love to all of you for taking the time to join us tonight. As always, we're here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Uh, so those are the days that we're on, and we're open. Big Thomas as family, so we're open to suggestions. If you have a business out there you want us to advertise, and your business, all you have to do, reach out to the marketing department, and of course, somebody will contact you. With that said, let me introduce our guests tonight. We have Mrs. Vera Added, and she's out of Maryland. She's started off with the program with us last week, and she's here tonight. Mrs. Added, hello and welcome to the show.
Ash,
Okay. We also have uh, Mrs. Grace Goa out of York, PA. Mrs. Goa, how you doing? Welcome to the show. So your phone is still muted.
Thank you, Ashwa. It's nice to be here.
Okay. And for the first time on the topic, we have Mrs. Edith Gonglo Ware. Mrs. Ware, hello and welcome to the show.
thank you, Ashford, and good to be here tonight too with all these beautiful ladies.
And other shows that have so men. But tonight I'm crowded with a lot of ladies tonight, right? Ain't that something good?
That's very good.
Well, let's see if we can bring in another guy to help me out tonight. I see it. What's his name? Jay Renning Dapple. Dapple, how you doing, sir? Welcome to the show.
Well, I hope you didn't spoil the women party because there's a guy coming from the back. So we need protection. So we'll protect them here tonight. But thank you guys so much for the opportunity. And it's always a pleasure to be here on such a platform to provide what I call awareness and information to our people and for ourselves. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity. And Ashford, it's an honor to be on Bridge Radio tonight. Thank you so much. Along with Letty, thank you as well too.
Okay, so now we're talking about the Congo and country divide. This is the second episode, and several more episodes to come. And we started off last week. We'll be going around the room to ask about your takeaway from the program last week. But before we do that, I will give each of you a minute uh, to tell us how you feel about this topic, this very sensitive topic. Let us begin with Mrs. Ware.
Well, let me first say Edith Gonglowe is my full name, and again, I'm happy to be here and to share in this very important topic. I think it's a good thing to have these constant conversations about our nation, and is diversity, how the diversity is looked at, how it has affected us, how it has helped us. It's a good thing to always have these conversations. So I think it's a great topic to discuss.
Thank you. Mrs. Vera Addy.
Welcome to the rest of the guests. I think it's overdue. And like I said last week, it's a good start for us to start talking about where we can all come together to the table to reconcile our differences because we are all one.
Thank you. Mrs. Gore.
Thank you for having me. And I think this is a good topic. And I just want to make sure that I share with other people out there that this topic did not come up to bring any divide amongst us as Liberians because we are already divided. But it was brought up so we can look into the issue that's dividing us as a people and for us to try to exist regardless of diversity because although there's diversity, but at the end of the day, we are all Liberians. So how can we see ourselves in a fold instead of always dividing one another because of tribe and everything? So this is to bring light to it that we will be able to come together as one people so our country can move forward in a positive direction.
Mr. Doppel.
Yeah, I think the topic to me is a learning experience because the generation gaps, as we see it today, is divided because of lack of knowledge. And I think this opportunity tonight will provide an insight of what everyone will take away from here based on the content and content of the discussion. I think there's a lot to be provided here tonight. And I hope that those, like the lady said, Grace, is not intended for any kind of political support here, but it's intended for our cultural value, our system of governance. Why are we to where we are today? What are the reasons that we are to where we are today? And I think those substances need to be discussed, especially with the lost generation, as I call them. And I'll detail that in time to come. But I think that would be a very good topic tonight. Thank you.
In journalism, we call this the backstory. So why don't we pick it back on where we left off last week? What was the takeaway from the discussion last week? Grace, Vera, Mrs. Roberts, any one of you can come in.
I'll come in this year. Well, my takeaway from the week is that there is still a lot of hostility in our country. We are still
You're not audible enough. You keep going in and out. Can you please welcome your device?
Am I audible?
You still go in and out.
Work on my volume.
Okay. Let's go to Grace as she works on her volume. Let us go to Grace. Grace?
My takeaway from last week's conversation to, after I listened to the show again and I look at the different comments, I start to take away from that our people really have to really be educated on this whole history of Liberia because there is no proper education given to us even when we're in school. The real foundation of how it all started as the country came into fruition as being called a country, Liberia. So we did not learn. We learned some, but we did not learn enough in detail and and well structured for us to believe that okay, this is the story that is told. And so the takeaway for me is that a lot of people are still not realizing the real story of this country, and that's the reason why the whole history of the country have been spilled out there with some true information and mostly lies because we were not really taught like the way we were supposed to be taught when it came to our history for the country.
Okay. Now, the country and Congo divide. What is it about? I want to begin with Mrs. Edith Gonglowe. What do you make of this topic tonight, and what is your take on it?
Thank you. Sadly, I was not on the show last week, and I didn't even go back to watch it. So I wouldn't know what was discussed last week at all. But let's just take a step back to where this country came from. How did it even evolve to what it is today? And I think the question you had asked earlier, while we were discussing backstage, was, do we really even still have pure Concord today? Is there that divide, in crystal clear terms? Do we have pure Congo people in Liberia today? There has been so much changes that have taken place over the years. I think for me, what is even more important is what happened from the coming of the settlers. What even drove the kind of divide that we see today? Like I said earlier during our previous discussion, which the others were not privy to, the settlers had just one experience from being in America, from being detached from their original home and brought here. They had one experience. That experience was one of a slave master and a slave. And so when they went back home, when they were repatriated to Africa, they had to give what they knew. What they knew was that relationship, that slave master and slave relationship. So they knew no better. And then the natives themselves were not receptive to their returning brothers as well. They saw them as people who were coming to take away their land. So there was that clash, there was that confusion. We had two different cultures. The American Liberians who had just returned to Liberia, who had been repatriated to Liberia, the culture that they were accustomed to was what was taught them here in the diaspora as slaves. Going back home, they couldn't fit in. So there was that clash, that constant clash of culture, clash of identity, clash of language. And so the division started from the very beginning. There was no acceptance from the indigenous as well as the returning Africans that had just been repatriated to Liberia or to the continent. So I think there's so much to unpack here, like Grace has said earlier. There's so much teaching to be done. There's so much research. There's so much learning, especially for the younger generation, so that all of these can be fully understood by all Liberians, especially the current generation. But as I see it today, I don't think that divide is not as deeply rooted as it was in the past. I mean, I could be wrong. I think that line has been blurred for a good number of years, given all of what has happened since the 1980s.
Thank you. Mr. Dabo.
Yes, for me, I just want your audience to know that my approach today is going to be based on timeline. Because the timeline that I plan to present here will give an insight of what we are facing today. Beginning with 1807. 1807, the Congress banned the importation of slavery. And then it was time for repatriation of Liberians. I mean, not Liberians, but African American who wanted to leave Africa. I mean, we want to leave the America to come to Africa. So after 1807, slavery was banned. The next thing we know, they started to import, they started to coordinate to the ACS to get African American who are just getting out of slavery to Africa. What I see happening there is the entry strategy. It's the reason why I think where we were before prior to 1980 and the disconnection that we have today. The settler they came, and I think it could have been due to lack of experience in dealing with people. And it could have also been the experience they had, that violent experience they had. Why the entry strategy was so weak? Well, when you arrive at any location, you got to understand the culture of the people. Today, we know what it means if you get on any soil with new people. You have to be very cordial, very civil to understand how the culture works, what can you do to assist rather than being in control. I think when they first entered, their entry strategy was maybe they felt that they had enough understanding experience, so their leadership or their presence meant that everything they said must be done the way it needed to be done.
2 more minutes, please.
And looking at that, it created a discontinuity between the people on the ground and the settlers that came in. And going through that, we all read about the different back and forth activities that took place between them. Were that ever settled? No, it wasn't settled. But I'll wait for my next time to come and begin on that. Now that they have met each other, had some skirmishes, let's see what happened after that. So I'll get back to you.
Lady Brooks Roberts.
Yes, thank you so much. Going back from last week, I do agree that this is a great conversation that needs to be had. While it's true, it may the divide may not be as bad as it was, but there's still that divide. People still refer to each other in that condescending way when it doesn't meet, when things are not going their way, and they try to insinuate that other people are doing better because of that Conga opportunity. And so, this is a conversation that we must have, because just as Mrs. Gunglo said, the people went back. They were not as accepted. Neither were the people that went back. They too had to get familiar with the environment, but they were treated badly here, and they went back and did the same thing. It's psychology. You only do what you know, and so they were acting, as though they were better than the people they met there, and so the people also had a little hatred for them. But going forward, when we came here, those of us that came freely, we still had those there's negativity as well. So it's not just in Liberia or Africa, it's here. The African Americans that have been born here
2
from
minutes.
those slaves are also negative to us when we come here. So it's a two what is a two-edged sword.
Mrs. Ade.
I hope I'm audible enough. Am I?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I was saying from last week, my takeaway was that there is still a lot of hostility in Liberians. But what we try to do, we tend to not talk about it, and we tend to hold it in. And I think that the divide is still deep. I think the divide is still wide, and you never know until you start to have the conversation. That's when you tend to hear the kinds of things that are coming out of the mouths of people, and then you start to think to yourself, my God, are we still that far apart? But I think that divide is still deep. It is still there. It is deeply rooted. And for example, like April 12th, if you see the kind of messages on April 12th, when we're celebrating April 12th holiday, the kind of messages I've seen on social media going back and forth between Congo and country people, I mean, it is, you can tell right there, then we are some damaged people. We are not even close to reconciliation yet. And that's why we have to start talking about it. That's why we have to have a dialogue about this, because without talking about it and without saying putting the truths out there and putting the wrongs to the side, we are not going nowhere. It's only going to go down into further generation. It's just going to linger.
Mrs. Goa, the divide is still there and it's deep. How do we eradicate this divide? How do we come together as Liberians and not see others as country or Congo?
When you say the divide is still there and it's deep, so I don't understand where the divide came from, because this country you people talk about, when the American Liberians went to Africa, there was no country there. The people you talk that exist on this land, they did not even own that land. So for people to just be seeing all the time that, oh, when they came there, they met the people there and they never learned the culture. There was no culture. The land was there, and they brought the people on that land before Liberia was ever established to be a country for anybody to even have culture in the first place. So that's why when I hear they say, oh, the people went there and they met these people there and they never learned the people culture. Was there any culture? Did any culture really exist? The people that were squatting and passing on that land, did they even own that property to have establish a culture in that? So, if we want to go back to real history, it's going to be hard for us to come to where we're supposed to be. And that's why our country has been so divided, because we are not, yeah, our people don't tell the true story of the country, but they still want to connect themselves to America, and America should do this and America should do that. But the lineage in which America needs to do that, they connect. They want to erase that Conquer heritage. But America is only connected to you because of American Liberians. How can you erase that? You want to own the land, but you want to own it from people and still, like, you want to take it away and say it's yours. But then these people have to exist because they went to that country and they created that country before you were even living in the country. So if America is so attached now, when we are came here recently, they say, oh, America didn't get the money and this and that. Even the bicentennial, they try to cancel the Congo heritage. So until we can accept one another as we are Liberians, and not seeing that there's a culture divide because the people, when they came there, they didn't accept the culture and stuff like that, then we're not going to come to one agreement. We have to admit we are all Liberians. We are all Africans. The people, they were sold into slavery. They went back to their land, just as you were there, and you thought the land was where you did left and took their own property. So until we can agree that we are Black and we are all family, Liberia is going nowhere.
Mrs. Edith Gonglo-Ware, what do you make of what she just said? There was no culture, the land was there, and there was nobody. You are muted, I guess. Please unmute your phone, your device.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I am baffled. When Grace said there was no culture, there was no land, I'm a little confused with that. Because then it takes me back to let's define what a culture is. Culture is a way of life, the way people live, the kind of things they do, what defines them. So if you say there was no culture, it's tantamount to say there was no human being in the place. When you say there was no land, where the people living in the air, so there was land. So when you go back to Eli Ayers, the guy who first went to negotiate before Jehudi Ashford could come, who did he trade with? You had the Bassa and the Day people right there from River Cess along the coastal line. They had to trade with the indigenous, the chiefs, the kings that owned the place. They purchased the land. So when you say there was no land, there was no culture, it kind of distracts from the entire, discussion, which I just wanted to make that correction, because we are on a medium here that's going to last maybe for a lifetime. These things are historical records, so we have to set the record straight. There was a country. There were different provinces and kingdoms and ruled by kings. They had their culture, their way of life, their system of governance. They had their religion and everything. When the returning American Liberians came, I hate to use the word Congo because that Congo is another whole discussion. When the American Liberians who were free slaves were repatriated to Africa to look for a place to resettle them, and they went to Shebro Island, and the harsh condition made them to go further to come towards Providence, to come to what is today Liberia, that was initially Cristobal and all of that. When they came, they had to negotiate with those who they met there. We can take the discussion from here. What happened in that relationship, that marriage, that new relationship that was evolving from the ACS to the natives to the indigenous. How did it go? What happened? Even the taxation before Liberia gained its independence, before Christopolis became a country called Liberia with a capital called Monrovia. What caused the friction? The taxation. Who were paying the taxes? It was the indigenous traders and the British traders. So Liberia is an unpacked story with so much complexities,
Thank you.
contradictions that I think tonight, as to end, what I think we can do tonight is to look at what has caused the friction. Is this friction still there? And I just heard from my sister Vera, she said it is deep. She's been following conversations on the social media during April 12 between, the two groups, the natives and the American Liberians. So let's look at that. Let's unpack that. Why this hurt? Why this continuous hurt? And we know the story. We know the history. What brought April 12? What caused April 12? That violent coup. What caused that? And should it perpetuate going further? How can we heal? We need to look at how we can heal. But until we can look at what caused us to destroy each other and look in the face and call a spade, the healing process is going to be prolonged.
Thank you. Before we go to Randy, I want to give Grace the opportunity to respond in 1 or 2 minutes. Grace?
Yeah, Mrs. Ray, I understand what you're saying with the part of the history that you read, but then another part of the history that we are reading is that Mr. Burroughs, Professor Burroughs, who was he's a Liberian professor that was digging into a history for many years, researching about Liberia. He could only find a deal like a piece of paper looking like a deal that was signed between, maybe a squatter on that land and the Stockton, Mr. Stockton and heirs, as you said, they signed that paperwork buying the portion of Maserati's side. So if something is bought, as you say that, if something is bought from somebody, do they own that stuff again? Because that's the same thing people are having now in Liberia. Killing one another, the people are killing one another for land because they sell the land and then they come back and they say, oh no, it's for me, and they sell it to another person and they come back. So if the ACS bought that portion of the land for the American Liberians, what are the indigenous doing on it? Before there is a culture that they even met there to start to argue with the people that you got to understand me. So if that land, because that's the only deed they can find now. Back in history, the history that I read, it says that because I like to read from 1416 all the way to maybe 1914, there was only squatters passing. Human beings were not on that land. The people that came and passed on that land, they came from the east and the north. They never saw anybody owning land in West Africa, neither South Africa. So
Thank you.
That history, you can tell me thank you when you get either going to go with 5 minutes.
I want to ask you to respond to her. You spoke.
Yeah, but I responded to her. So
the same level time it took you to talk about there was nobody on the land. There was no, So I just asked you to respond to her. They're all in line.
Let me just wrap it up quick. So with all that stuff, we're talking about the other side of Liberia. They cannot find any purchase deed right now because the people are still looking. Things got missing and stuff like that. But at least Mr. Burroughs was a typical Liberian blood. He thank God he was so educated that he went into research for many years and he was able to find the deal. You see this? It's the paperwork that he found. If you see the brownness, and that deal showed that part of Maserati, which is now in Monrovia, where everybody runs to, that land was purchased by ACS for American Liberians. So if it was purchased for American Liberians, is the land yours, sis? Is that land for any indigenous now? So that's my question. That's the reason why we shouldn't be fighting. Because if we fight, some of us will fight deeper and will go deeper into history. There will be we don't give that information to our Liberians.
Okay,
So
Grace.
yeah, we don't give it to them, and that's not
Thank
fair. Yeah.
Dapo.
Yes, it's very interesting to be on the panel here, and I think the question you asked about eradication, uh, the issue of divide and Congo is not going to be. When I mean divide and Congo, I'm not talking about Congo now, but I'm talking about capturing. It's not going to go away. All right, even in America here, Dr. King, Otto Hakam, still racism exists here because it's all about one controlling the other. So it's not going to exist. Even on the panel here now, we still see the reason here. Now, let me come back here again. Like I said, I'm going to structure the thing and discuss it on the timeline.
Okay.
So after the slave returned to Liberia,
You got
right?
2 minutes to do that. 2 minutes,
Yes,
please.
yeah, but actually, let's be honest here now. You give me other time here. All right, so let's be honest here.
Okay, let me
Yeah.
make it straight. Let
Yeah,
me make
set
it
the rule. Set the rule. As I mean, myself, I
Okay.
will not hesitate but to come in. You have to set the rule. You have to set the tone.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
All
3
right.
minutes.
All right, thank you. So the settler learned it. The history goes. All right, Library of Congress. It's down to Congress. University of Indiana, University of Congress, University of California, UCLA. They got all this information. There were people living over there, firstly called Peppercoast. And then it came to the Ginkgos. There were Liberians living there. There were people living there, not Liberians, but there were people living over there. After the Songhai Empire went away, people started to spread and scatter around. Now, when they got over there, the land that was purchased, was it purchased on a consensual or was it purchased by force? For what we know, guns were put to somebody's head. That means the person was not in consent to setting their land rather than leasing their land in Ghana. So when we talk about the consensus of owning a land, that story does not add up. Now, as far as how this whole divide and rule came about, I would say this: from 1847 up to 1980, we were between a class and a non-class. There were class of people versus the non-class of people. That's how it was. And that's how, when you look at certain geography of the country, all the presidents that came to power, whether they came from the United States or President Tubman, prior to President Tubman, they all refused to what? To move beyond Montserrat County because they limited everything to Montserrat County. That's why they had the Liberia University that now became the University of Liberia. David Coleman came in and wanted to have a policy that would include the rest of the other geographic land of Liberia. And he was only giving one term because David Coleman understood that there were people in that geographic. But you know, the history is always taught based on the customization of how people want other people to understand. So I hold nobody accountable on the platform that just say Montserrat existed because that's how they were taught. But when you go beyond the Montserrat, you will get to know why things are the way it is today. And I will say this before I close quickly here, all right? Since 1847, when Liberia became independent, Joseph Jenkins Robert met the additional people in the year 1874. That was 27 years prior to them being in office. That means they settled the Congress, they ran the government, they adopted the Constitution. They never met the additional people until 1874. Kind of remind me of how the U.S. right down in Philadelphia set the Constitution, established the country where the people of color were serving them and never brought them to the table. So we'll start there again. I will start there.
You were on time.
The next time I come by again, we'll see what we do next.
And you were on time. Folks,
Thank
if
you.
you're just joining us, this is Ashford Garley Live on Bridge Radio Africa. We come your way Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. On Wednesday of this week, we will play host to two prominent sons of Liberia, and we are going to be discussing the post protest on this platform. We'll have Ava Topa from the ANC, and we'll also have Mr. James Coyne, who is from the CDC. They both will be here on Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Bridge Radio Africa. You own a business out there, you want us to create awareness for your business, all you have to do, contact us here at Bridge Radio Africa. You want a voice over production work done, feel free to contact us. If you have talent and expertise and you want to host your own program on our network, you can also feel free to contact us. We'll have time available for you as well. At this point, we want to go to Mrs. Letty Brooks Roberts. Then we'll go to Mrs. Adi. Mrs. Roberts.
Yes. Hey, Ashwa. This again, for me, I think that I would like to stay away from this because this is going to go where, as Madam Gonglo said, this is going to go down in history, and we need to prepare ourselves better to discuss this issue. Yes, there were people on the ground. How do you go somewhere that nobody there? Just as when they said
Christopher Columbus.
America was discovered, there were people already here. There were people there that were in the hinterland. Yes, the Mende people were in Liberia. They came from the north, yes, but people were there before these settlers stopped here because Liberia was right along the coast. And so they stopped there. They didn't even know where they were going. So we can go back and forth. And then, I don't want to, like I said, want to mislead without knowing what exact topic we want to talk. We want to talk about this Congo divide. But when we start to talk about who was there, who wasn't there, we're going to mislead some people here. And, it's going to be controversial, and we don't want that. So I want to stay in this. I'm sorry?
No, I think it depends on the context and content of how you discuss this issue, because in order to determine what the divide and how the divide started, the root cause of how, why, define wise, you have to define those things. And I think everyone tried to define it here. And as we all interact with each other, Sis Letty, it will give us a sense of how things are unfolding. But to just limit ourselves, I don't think we'll be doing ourselves justice. And that's why I think it's not going to end tonight. There will be a series, as I see it. There will be a series of continuous discussion.
It is a series.
Yeah.
But we also want to invite historians as well, because we all can read and interpret things the way we see it.
Yeah.
But again, I beg to differ that there were no people. From where I come from, the culture was there. We were there. The Africans, the Marylanders were there.
Yeah.
And then when the American Liberians came, they saw them with the coat suit.
Yeah.
And so that's how they got to start mixing their lapas with the coat.
Thank
so
you.
How can we not, how can we disagree that people were there?
And that's why
were there.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't mean to cut you off. But
what I thought, Randy, let her bring in somebody. Let her bring in Mrs. Adi. Do you buy that, Mrs. Adi, that there was nobody on the land, and there was no culture at the time?
Well, who said there was nobody on the land though?
It is
saying that the people were on the land did not own the land; they were squatters.
Where, Grace?
We said the thing last week.
I
don't understand why now they say they were squatters. They did not own the land. It wasn't for them.
Please hold on. Let's bring in Mrs. Adi.
I think it is when we speak with other one, somebody say there was no one on the land. We are taking it as no human being existed there. I don't think that's the interpretation of what Grace was saying. There was no one on it, because we started this conversation last week, and we said the people there were passerby. There were people there. The land was not just sitting there empty all by itself and operating by itself. What we said was that from what we have read, the people there did not own the land, because at that time there was no demarcation called Liberia. So when there had not been any demarcation yet, when the land had not been purchased yet, there were people from different parts of the Green Coast that were all over the place. So, like I said last week, the Bassa people settled in Cameroon also. So how are we to say that the Bassa people that are there now, some of them didn't matriculate from Cameroon when the land was finally demarcated, and when they settled on the side that was eventually called Liberia. So I think sometimes when we talk with each other, and sometimes we tend to talk a lot, sometimes we just got to understand there's no land that exists where no one resides. Somebody is there. So let us not just say, oh, it's baffling for somebody to say no human being were on it. I don't think that's what Grace was trying to say, though. We said last week, the people came together when the land was finally bought, when the slaves landed, those who were there at the time and those who landed, we know they did not agree. But Mrs. Ware also alluded to the fact that there were people on the land, there were kingdoms, and there was culture. So I'm thinking in my mind, if I'm residing to a place and I have kingdoms that exist and I have cultures that already exist, it means that I'm solidified in that. So how is it that people will come from somewhere and I am willing to sell what I have already solidified, and I'm willing or not, but there were some hostilities. I am so at the point that if those people were less in numbers, but they were able to push my kingdoms and cultures that were already solidified for years ago, as people were saying it, how were they able to overshadow that? How were they able to push it to the side?
Because they were indigenous. They didn't know, you know, they
Please,
didn't
please
know.
So
not
they
interrupt, Mrs.
are not wise people.
No, no, I'm not saying indigenous people are not wise people. I said they were living their normal lives. But these people came and looking for a place to stay as free slaves because they didn't want them here. So they went and found a spot to stay.
But they were
That's
already,
what we're saying. But they were there.
yeah, but I'm not saying they were not there, Mrs. Roberts.
But yeah, but you said Grace didn't say that. Grace did say there were no people there.
You
I
have
said that people did not own that land because the original human beings that were in Africa,
Yes, you're
they,
gonna have your 3
they
minutes.
came from the north and the
Can you
east.
please allow viewer to land, and Mrs. Roberts, please hold that thought as Mrs. Adi lands. And you
Sorry.
just have 1 minute, Mrs. Adi, please. I'll give you another minute, make it two because of the interruption.
as intellectuals, we have to understand there is no land that exists that don't have any human being. And the conversation is continuing from last week. When we started last week, we did not come here to say there was nobody. So the conversation is now continuing. When somebody said there was nobody on the land, we are talking in the sense that there was no ownership of the land. It doesn't mean no human being existed on the land. And I'm saying that okay, human beings existed, but Miss Ware just told us that those people had kingdoms and cultures already established. Now, my question is that if they already had their kingdom and the cultures established, what happened that they came up to free slaves that came who were less than them? And the bottom line is that is not the point of the conversation, but like we said, we have to start somewhere. And last week I said that we all have to be accountable. The American Liberians have to be accountable for what they came did. The indigenous people have to be accountable for what they did to the brothers and sisters who were already there. Also, maybe they were passerbys before they got into slavery. We did talk about last week how the people back then were into wars and they were prisoners and stuff like that. So how do we move forward from here? This conversation, I think we're taking the conversation backward instead of moving forward.
Thank you.
The true history, because every side has a history. At this point in time, nobody knows what is true, what is really, really true, and what is mixed up.
Thank you. Again, we have 30 minutes to be at, and we'll just begin again with Mrs. Goa and go and find our way around the room. And this time I will give you 3 minutes uninterrupted. Mrs. Goa, then we'll go to Mrs. Ware. Mrs.
So
Goa,
please start counting my minutes, please, before you give me 1 minute.
I can go ahead.
Yeah, as I said before, this conversation is coming up not to bring any animosity. And that's the reason we wanted to even have the conversation in the first place, because Liberians don't know how to hold each other accountable and don't know how to accept blames. They always want to put it on one side and leave on the other side. And that's the reason why we have to start from the root part of this conversation. And that's the reason why it's even taking us back. Because if we're moving forward from last week, I would not have to reiterate. I keep on saying this thing that there were squatters, passerbys, the people were passing on that land. The west coast of Africa, they had a lot of food because of the sea and this and that. So people used to pass in that area. Some people would stay there for some time. When the people landed, they wanted to have a place for them. And that's the reason why I don't know about all the other pieces of land, but at least historians have found the deed or the paperwork that was signed by Sutton and Ayers, that they signed that paperwork for Monrovia area. The settlers then sat on Monrovia because the people came from slavery. They could work. They were hardworking people. You know, they did not go and just take anything for anybody. Who knew for that in Liberia? The other side, they always, you establish stuff and they want to come and grab it and take it away from you. The people worked, they knew how to work on farm, they were slaves. So when they went to Monrovia, after that place was purchased and the deed is in history today, it's in the library now. Y'all please go to the library, my people. Y'all ask the people, it's there. They will show you the purchase name of Monrovia area. The people sat there and they built that city. So let's forget about every other part of the land. Let's forget about Cape Palmas, where I'm from. Let's forget about every part. But when they built that city, everybody in the other area of Liberia, after the country was known, they came running to Monrovia. Do they go back anymore, Ashford? No. Everybody want to live in Liberia up to today. Something that other people built, but now they want to castigate these people and destroy their lineage and say they don't have no owner, no rights to the country. But then the place they build at where they can't leave. Because all the other countries, let's give it to them. They were established. I disagree with Mrs. Webb, but she said that they were established and they had kingdoms. Why did they build their kingdoms? Why everybody run to Monrovia today where the settlers built? And they were killed. Why they trying to run there? That's my question.
Your time is up, Mrs. Goat. Mrs. Webb, 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you so much. Listening to Mrs. Gua and, you know, the discussion tonight, it just really tells me that we have a lot of work to do in Liberia because there exists a lot of misconceptions and everyone has different story. I think it was Mrs. Roberts who said, look, we need to be cautious with what we say here. I made a statement and she kind of reiterated that as well. I'm speechless because I haven't been following these debates. But what I'm hearing tonight is a rude awakening for me that this country is still on the verge of total collapse until we can have these conversations and true conversation, true national conversations to put the record right. You know, when we start to hear, you know, statements like, you know, why they can't be in their own place, they come to the play the bill. You know, it sounds so divisive and segregational. It still tells me that we're talking about two separate countries, a nation within a nation. It reminds me of the history of America, where you still have the Indians living on reservations. Tonight, I am sobered by this discussion. I thought that we didn't even have conquer and country thing anymore. I was dead wrong. I think it's deep. I think it's palpable. I can feel it tonight. So Ashford, for me, tonight, I want to take a step back and just listen because I'm learning a lot. From listening to Mrs. Gua, I've learned so much in terms of the misconceptions, the division that is so palpable. I've always dismissed it, but it's real. It has been made real to me tonight. So I will yield my time to the brother. I want to listen more because so much is coming out.
Your time is already up.
No. Okay, well, I won't be there.
I want to leave.
I will take that 1 minute.
You use our 3 minutes.
I don't
1 more minute there, make it full.
you 2 minutes and 55 seconds. So
Okay, Rennie, go ahead.
thank you guys so much. Look, I think from what I heard you discuss with me this morning, Ashford, and what we are going through in our country, and from what I'm hearing here, is a total package of misinformation, disinformation that we need to really sit down. I think someone said, I think at the end of the day, it's like we are just the state dancers, but the actual participant need to come here and come with real sources of information. I mean, I went to an engineering school, but it was a black college, and I took a lot of African American classes. But from what I'm hearing here tonight, is really telling me that we got a long way to go. I often say that by the year 2065, before Liberia will become a better country, and now I stand by that. By the year 2065, before we start to see a better country, because there is more divisiveness that I see right now. So yeah, my question here. We often say that Liberia is 43,000 square miles. So is this conversation, and I'm going to be very pointing now to my sister Goa, is she defending Montserrat County? If that it, have it your way. We're going to take everything and we're going to focus on the 14 counties. But I don't think nations that want to partner with us will only look at Montserrat County. The Indian reservation. Someone said, what happened to the king of your bill? Well, history already has the propensity to repeat itself. The people that came from Europe, from New York, Massachusetts, they drove the people today. They are somewhere in where you greeted your friend, how they call it, Ashford Garley, North Dakota. As an environmental engineer, I had to deal with two policies in the country, the Indian reservation policy and the U.S. government policy to other organizations in this country here. So for someone to say, we have a land, we purchased this, it's still, bottom of my mind, because how was the land purchased is not being explained. Did people voluntarily give the land or people came?
And Mr. Dapo, and that's the thing that concerns me for Mrs. Red. Let me just come in quick.
Mrs. Goa.
No, but you.
Let's come in. I
will allow her to come.
Okay. But you want me to complete quickly because I know I'm almost done with my time. Yeah. So what I think we need to establish here, one, are we discussing how Montserrat? Because I will give it to Mrs. Gore if she said that Montserrat County belongs to the settler. Yes, when they came, they purchased a piece of land, but they took the Game Coast, they took the Pepper Burr and said, we are going to name the place Liberia. So Liberia was only limited to Montserrat County. And that is why they had a Liberia University. But then when Totman came in, he spoke about the open door policy because David Coleman wanted to establish the entire country to be together. And this is where the division came in, because as the country grows over time, there were additional people that were attached to Liberia. But because what Mrs. Gore is saying, it was the mindset back then that, look, we are only Montserratians. I don't know how to call them Montserratians or what. So we only care for this terrain. And that meeting from 1847 up to 1980. And the result is why we see most of the other counties are underdeveloped in terms of human capacity, infrastructure development. That brought a divide. So how do we bridge that together? Do we bridge that together to say we still want to cling to our piece of land? Well, that will not hold because the current generation is looking at inclusiveness rather than division. So I don't know, but are we talking about the ownership of Montserrat County, or are we talking about how can we bring ourselves together? Because the Indians in America here can come out and say, look, we own the land, all right? Christopher,
Ashford is better than indigenous. And you see how he aligned Mr. Dapo to go with
I was
You're funny.
This one. Listen, I think Mrs. Robertson, she wanted to chill. Oh, you
Did you really say Ashford is really indigenous?
Yeah, because it comes
oh
for you.
My God.
He will allow you to speak more than 5 minutes when Dapo comes.
Listen,
He allows me and people we are like restrained in the back. As soon as I get 2 minutes, he's like, oh, it's time for you to finish. It's time for you to finish. It's very unfair.
Listen, I'm going by time here, Mrs. Goa. I will not give you less time than the others. Please.
Ashford, please be
fair. I'm not indigenous. You don't want to call me indigenous.
As fair as possible. Mrs. Roberts, did you say
yes.
you were going to hold on to your thought? You want to come in?
No, what I want to say is, in all fairness, Grace and Vera, I think they are the one that wanted to bring this topic to the platform. They have learned something they want to share. So let's listen to them, and then if we have questions for clarity, we can do that.
Thank you, Mrs. Roberts.
Okay, We'll not go to Mrs. Addit, then Mrs. Goad, just to be fair in terms of the rotation. Please unmute your phone, Mrs. Addit.
Well, I don't have much to say. I think I'm just gonna pass. The before I pass, the only thing I would say, like I said last week, I come from both backgrounds. And I said last week, Congo has become a thing of status. It is not. It doesn't have anything to do with lineage anymore. We are all indigenous people, as far as I'm concerned. I'm Congo. I'm not no country. I'm from both sides. I speak my mother tongue very well and very fluently. So, and most of the time when we're on our live, people hear me speak it fluently. I don't shy away from speaking my mother's tongue. So, but like one of the panelists said, I think maybe this topic is beyond us. We needed historians to come on, so I will pass. And maybe the historians can come on next week and then lay the premise, and then maybe I can be able to come back in and give my opinion or learn something.
Girl, give me your minutes. Don't pass, man. I will
And
come for you.
Mrs. Goad, it's on yet last week. She said, I'm trying to be Congo. And today again, she said, actually, I react indigenous man. I don't know what she wants me to be now. Come on, Mrs.
But that's how you guys play it. You want to be indigenous when it fits you, and you want to be Congo when it fits you. And that's why you're doing to the country.
Don't say that.
You want to be indigenous, time to get America money. Oh, we American Liberians, the Americans need to look at us. They establish our country. And every time when America Liberians are supposed to rule the country, oh, he's a Congo man. We're giving the country to the son of the soil, and we want son of the soil.
Those are all politics, Grace. Those are all politics. You got to be able to manipulate your way.
Politics is destroying
the movement against Obama here, why they were trying to exclude him from this land. It was all politics. It's just a strategy that some people like that they cannot work around these things.
But how can we use that? How can we give the history to our children? The politics is destroying like 97% of Liberians are politicians.
That's why the curriculum in the school is separate from the politics outside. That's why you have academia. That's why you have professors who will give a clear definition. Because remember, generation got their own strategy of how they want to put policy in place to lead a certain time in life. But over time, the society can come and change those things.
So can you agree now that the politics have destroyed Liberia? Because right now the school system is whack. And I'm surprised that Mrs. Uncle we're sitting here and say this platform.
Well, let me say this here. Let me say this.
You don't see people in the street and seeing some of the saw. I was saying you don't see all of that.
Yes, says Grace. Yes, the thing quickly here. Let understand from 1847 what structure was put in place. The original sin of any country is illiteracy. The system of governance that was established from Joseph Jikin Raoul to President Tubman to do what was put in place to say at the age of 19, everyone who is in that age should graduate throughout the country. What system was put in place? None.
There was a system put in place. You did not go to school in Liberia. I went to school in Liberia. I went to B.W. Harris.
Okay.
I can name my schools.
Okay, so the school
there was a system in place.
The system that was in place only benefited certain people and disenfranchised certain people. Because when you measure the number of uneducated people across the different counties, our uncle, our aunt cannot read and write. But there are certain people who went to JJ Roberts CWA that can read and write.
But because my brother too in the house, my 4 brothers, they are Wobas. They're from the Pella tribe.
Yeah, but it was selected rather than it being a required policy.
Can I just
you see they're taking my time. They always do that. There you go.
You don't settle on to kind of do the thing. You see, you don't settle on.
Just jump in my throat.
Hold on, Mrs. Goa. Go ahead and finish your time.
Well, I was surprised. I can't go ahead and finish my time. My 3 minutes just start now. Rainy jumped right in my throat and almost choked me. So I cannot. He laughed me. But I was just surprised to hear Mrs. Red. Don't disrespect you because I love you and I love your brother. I think you guys are great. But I just wanted to share with you that you cannot be surprised at this platform on this particular discussion. You cannot be surprised because you live in Liberia. You see the divide. So when it's one side dividing it, it's okay with you. But then when somebody else come from the other side and say, okay, this is what happening, and then you have a problem with it. You live in Liberia, you see how the people speak. You saw the last political party, CDC. They bully any other power, like they bully her, that they had to take power. The Congo people, they can't rule the country no more. We have had people come on our post. Congo men will never take Liberia. The country belongs to the son of the soil. We have voted in on our rhetorics. He was voted in like that. So how can you be surprised? I am just giving you a taste of your thoughts. The same thing they've been doing in Liberia. I try to do it from the other side to see how it feel like when you're treating, because most of the American Liberians children, and they're not talking. They don't even back. Some of them check out totally. The typical American Liberians, the ones that real American Liberians, they don't be bothered with Liberia issue anymore because the bullying is too much on their side. The bullying is too much with the people, so they just move away from that. But you cannot be surprised on this topic, and you cannot be surprised on where I'm coming from, because the divide started from the other side. It did. Although American Liberians did what they had to do, they did what they knew, and it was wrong what they did. But later on, when Turbo came into power, that's the time I was born. Growing up in that environment, I saw us blend. That's where I'm coming from. I was not born in the 60s. I saw us blend. I had Yagba then in my class. We were all students together. I had people with I had Garleys on Bromley Mission. They were my schoolmates. So we were all mixed up together. That's the era I'm coming from. And I never saw the actual divide, because my brothers then that were brought from the interior, from one man, one pa, there were 4 of them. They were Wabas. They went to the same school I went to. And they live good lives now. Although one of them died in the war. So I'm just saying, Turbo tried to bring Liberians together. So, and then things were trying to get better. Things were trying to get better. Dworkin, and he took power. So we're moving on for that. What did Dwo do? The first thing when he took power that day, 23 people died right away. They were all American Liberians. He killed 23 people on that day of the coup. After that, 13 people more were on the pause. He shot them to death in front of the country. They still got a thing playing now on social media. He killed people. So that's when the divide even got worse, because indigenous came into power. So after all that was said and done, he did not even trust his own people, because there were so many indigenous around him now, from the Gio tribe, from the Crown tribe, everything that were around him. And then he started having problem with that. He started killing them too. He killed Wesson. He killed Franz Hamilton. He killed Kwampa. He killed all those people. Now, when he knew that he couldn't make it, then he started to bring indigenous Liberians now to help him to restructure the country. And that's what I saw. So then the divide started to come even worse after Turbo was trying to save it. And we can't blame each other for this, because you know what? Our country was changed into a way by the same Americans. They try to divide us as people. And we cannot see that. Yeah, we cannot see that and accept that.
Grace, thank you, Grace. You just went over your minutes. We allow you to take additional 3 minutes, and you're still talking.
Yeah,
I think you need to bring Grace one-on-one here. Grace with one-on-one.
Grace.
Yeah, we need to do one-on-one, man.
Grace needs more time. Look, Grace, when I said tonight that I'm shocked at what I'm hearing, not that I haven't heard about Conquer and Country, but I just feel that people have used that for political reasons. That divide and rule, a strategy. I never really felt the nerve that I'm feeling tonight. That's why I said I'm shocked, because I've always felt low when people say, "Oh, the Congo people," I say, "Oh, let them move. This is just politics." What's the difference? Everyone has erred. We're talking about bad governance. So it's not about whether you conquer or you country. It's about whether you're fit to lead. That has always been my, response to Congo country discussion. But when I hear it live like this tonight, that's why I said, wow, what I've been taking lightly is really not as lightly as I've taken it.
Have you gone to Spoon TV, Mrs. Ware?
There is.
Kev Hassan saying they're them against us. They preach that divide right there. I mean, the
either side is bad.
Exactly.
I don't care where it comes from. Whether it's country people saying it, it's bad.
It's
When
bad.
Congo people say it's bad. But then we need to look at the root causes.
Yeah.
Because you can never fix a problem if you do not know the foundation of that problem. We got to be truthful to ourselves. How did this all come down?
Let
I
me
think
tell
I
you
started from
something.
the beginning.
In 2
There
seconds.
is a need for this honest national conversation.
You
What we
know
are
how
doing
it walking down?
tonight, what we are
You want
doing
to
here
know how it
tonight,
walking down?
we all know. We
Okay.
all know your account may be different from mine because everybody see it through a different prism. You
Yeah.
see it through a different lens
Mm-hmm.
based on your strategic experience
Yeah.
and connection. What you may interpret as the cause of the problem may be different from how I interpret it from my vantage point. So there's a need for people to sit at the table and have a real national conversation about this because it is eating the country raw.
Yeah.
And we cannot continue with this vicious circle. And you only hear this mostly pronounced when it's around election time.
Exactly.
For me, that's when I hear a lot of the Congo country thing. And that's why I kind of narrow it to people taking political advantage of the majority of the people. Because if you ask the actual native man today who was born maybe in the 80s or the 70s and the 90s, let's say the 80s and the 90s, those who are voters today, you bring Congo country, they really don't understand what you're talking about. Because
Really?
that's when you talk about poor boy in the 90s, they don't know what you're talking about. That's not their lived experience. And
They
so
don't know what you're talking about because they already been told that the Congo people can't take the land.
No,
That's why they're in the street. Jose. I was talking about
I don't think I don't think I don't
they're in
I
the
don't
street
think
doing
the
that.
division is about land so much as it is about poor governance.
Oh,
I don't think
I
it's
can't
about land
believe
as
that
much
I
as
can't
it is
believe that
about
you
poor
would I
governance.
can't believe that you would say that because the poor governance, Ellen, if you compare Ellen to we are you can't even compare. So you cannot say
I'm not saying poor governance.
it's a
I'm not
mix.
saying poor governance by Congo people. I
No, I
just
know you
say
see you
governance. I don't care who it is. It can be Wea, it can be Tolbert, it can be Totman, it can be anyone, it can be Doe. Our crisis is a result of poor governance.
no, our crisis is the result of poor government because of tribalism. That's the
It's
reason
not
it
just
is.
tribalism,
Because of
sectionalism. Oh,
tribalism, they
where
say
are you leaving sectionalism?
exactly. Because and the thing is that the tribalism they don't understand it's not actually a tribalism, it's sexualism. But the people now they think it's tribalism because it's always we from the other tribe and we're not saying nobody should really recognize the identity. We just saying it is too much and it's bringing problem into the country that even people who are Congos, the real American Liberians, they are afraid to even identify with their own. They're afraid to even identify with their own. Whereas the indigenous, they wish they want to identify with their own and say, oh yeah, Congo, but they want carry Gale instead of Gale. They want
So,
be Genesis instead of Rapato. They won't carry the Congo people need, but at the same time they say they civilize indigenous. But and that what Vera said it's a status. I said it last week. It is a status now. There is no real Congo person that actually they have one or two of them, but they real typical American Liberians that came from here and went back home. They all mixed with the indigenous Liberians that were there, and they all now all have been mixed up. So there should be no tribalism going on. Instead, we should look at who is the best person to be the president of this country to move us forward. It don't have to be what tribe he's from. It don't have to be which lineage he's from. It has to be the person is capable of doing the job and it will move Liberia forward. And that's the reason why we came on this platform to even have this conversation because we want to let Liberia people to know that. We want them to know that oh no, Guillaume can never be president in the country. It's not going to happen. Guillaume will not be president in the country. No, Guillaume is a Liberian. So he has the right to be president in the country.
Vera,
Right.
when you add tribalism to politics is deadly, is terrible, is bad. I don't care what side it comes from. Tribal politics is terrible, it's dangerous. That's what we are speaking against. And the issue of Congo and country divide that we were talking about here from the get-go, it is bad. I am not saying any of it is good. It's not good to discriminate against anybody. Whether
Right.
you Congo, you country, discrimination is just bad. You know, like Martin Luther King said in this country, judge not the man by the color of his skin, but the content of his character. People should not be judged by where they come from, who they are. You should be judged by who you are. What is your makeup? What makes you? What defines you? What's your character? That's what should define people.
And that's the reason why we are having this
Okay.
conversation. That's why we brought it
Exactly.
here.
Okay,
So
guys.
we
But
can
when
teach
it
the
comes
etiquette
to
of our
the
people.
guys.
when we start to say their side and our side, it
Thank you.
deepens the divide and it's not good for us.
Thank you, folks. Again, time has caught up with us, and this is just the second of many series.
But we're not making our closing statement.
Listen, my brother. We want to thank you all for taking time out to come here tonight. I will just go to the line and take a few calls, and then we'll come back with a closing statement. We will be 1 minute each. We have a caller in the line. Hello, caller. Hello, caller.
Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Garley.
You got 1 minute. Tell us your name and where you call from, please.
Yeah, my name is Lucien, calling from Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Garley, for the show tonight, and I want to say thank you to the panelists. Mr. Garley, I think this discussion is very important for our country. Like just what the sister said here, Sister now Vera, the one in the black saree, I'm not looking at her name right now, that the tribal politics in our country is something that will continue to push us apart from each other. And I think all we need as Liberians is to continue the education, because that's one of the things that today we're lacking of. One of the things that for me, I'm a young person born around the 80s. I will not maybe know much about the past, except maybe through the means of reading. But one of the things I see in Liberia has to do with lack of education. And these things were established from the foundation of our country, wherein certain people didn't have the opportunity to go to school. Now maybe their fault or whoever fault that was, it's up
Thank you,
to
my
God,
brother.
because we don't know. But if education is being spread out, that even here in America, Mr. Garley, we got a lot of young people here born in here. We got our people here born in the young people
Thank
here
you so
in
much.
America.
Thank you,
But
brother.
are we giving them those education to really establish that foundation so that tomorrow this type of discussion will not be confused on how to be able to put it out there? We're not seeing it.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing it since for the few years I've been in America. I'm not ready to see it.
Thank you
and
so
I
much.
think it is important for us to have such a discussion so the young generation that coming after our generation can be able to like see that foundation established. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, folks, again, time has caught up with us. Next Monday, we'll have a brand new episode of the Congo and Country Divide. I'm gonna go around the room now to get closing statement. But before then, we want to take another call, Lord. Hello, caller. Tell us your name.
Hi, my name is Thomas Kane. I'm calling from Minnesota.
1 minute, please.
Yeah, so I was just going through Facebook and I just came across the discussion and it was kind of interesting. So I thought to listen. I think the point to make here is like you all said, maybe historians really need to come so these things can be discussed in terms of what the real truth is, because some of the points that I made don't connect. One person is saying that, okay, there were people, but they were squatters. They had no right to land. But then the point is people bought land from them. You don't buy land from a squatter.
Thank you.
And I think our understanding of this whole land ownership is we go to the statutory. I own the land because I get right. I got a document to show for it. But the current land rights law in Liberia has just gone back to resolve this issue from the foundation of the state. Because For many years, customary land rights was not recognized in our country.
Thank you,
But
sir.
it's now recognized in the Land Rights Act.
Thank you, sir.
That means people who were there that had
Thanks for calling, sir. Thank you so much. Hello, caller.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, 1 minute, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Garley. Oh, you know, this is very interesting, and I wish, you know, we have at least 2 minutes to make a phone.
Hello?
Gonglo was sitting up here. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, even Miss Gonglo were is still sitting in studio there. I mean, she's a part if you one or two view. Let her be frank and fair to the whole country. The whole thing started when these people killed Tobo, and Tobo said, let's educate our people. And she knows very well that because Tobo said that thing, they put Tobo in the middle of the setting. How can this man come and say to educate the people? But they forgot to know that the people will grow, the country will grow, and the educated people, the country will develop. They never did it. And they said, but what happened? Let's get rid of the man. They killed Tobo. Education, and they know that education is the best. It's the best thing for the country. Go to the foreign minister today and go and read what Tobo book.
Education is the best thing for the country. Thank you so much. 302, tell us your name, please. 1 minute.
Hello?
Yeah, 1 minute, please.
Yes, my name is Sergio Moore. You calling from Dover, Delaware?
Okay.
Yes, I think we continue to make the same mistake as Liberians. They said to us when the slave went to Liberia and they met indigenous people, they fought. I believe there was not total solution. There was no total healing between them. Now, fast forward, we had a 15 years of civil war. Instead of us implementing the TRC to solve the problem, we didn't do that. So I see some repetition of using problem unsolved. I think that will hurt Liberia for a very long time.
Thank you. The last caller, 502. Tell us your name, please.
Hello, my name is Donald Richards, calling from New Hope, Minnesota.
Okay.
I was just calling in because I was kind of like interested in the topic and stuff like that. I wanted to chime in. There's a host, a participant or whatever on the show by the name of Grace, stealing some information. And I think it needs to be righted as that our people should understand that, you know, gunboat diplomacy or whatever was something that happened with Maserati County. It wasn't the fact that she's saying that it was true deeds. You know, history has taught us that there's something called cultural relativism. That means a set kind of people has a certain way of living, you know, in society or whatever. You cannot say that, oh, because the white man says, you know, it is true deed, that's the only way people can own lands or whatever. And that should be the only thing that should apply to Africans.
Thank you. Well, folks, that's enough of the callers, and that's all the time we have to be with you tonight. I will go around the room, give each of you 1 minute, because listen, in radio we deal with time. I don't know about other platforms, but I would not sit there and go over time. We have something to do, and we are here for the next 3 minutes. So let me begin with Dapo, your radio man. You should know about time. 1 minute, please.
Yes, as long as don't interrupt me. All right, my time starts now. I will say this in 1 minute. From 1847 to 1980, it was a class system. The elite class was the additional class. In that process, no policy, no structure, nothing was put in place. From 1980 to 1989, it began an additional internal conflict. From 1990 to 2005, it began a conflict resolution based on armed struggle. Now, from 2005 to present, it is all about constructive structural leadership. That's how I see it. And what happened today? You look at the remnant of what happened in the country today. People are uneducated, no role, no health system, nothing. So I give it up to Mrs. Gonglo today. The lack of structural governance is the root cause of this thing. It's not a human being, but the system that we fail to put in place. Nobody should tell you that root cause is human being fault.
Thank you.
What you fail to do is what the root cause. So
Thank
the
you,
lack of structural governance is the main reason for where we are today.
Thanks for coming at a very short notice.
As always, man. As always.
This is where? 1 minute, please. Unmute your phone, please.
So, like Dapo said, this topic needs to be further discussed. The root cause of our problem is clear. We've said it here. The lack of putting system in place and having good governance from the very beginning of the establishment of the country called Liberia has, compounded our problem decades after decades after decades after decades. And so today, this is where we are. In order for us to come up with solution, there needs to be a deconstruction of what was put in place. We still don't have a system in Liberia, and nobody should mistaken that the breakdown of system started from the 1980 coup d'etat. No, the poor and weak foundation was already there. It wasn't made, it wasn't made pronounced when the coup took place, and then followed by the 14 years of war and all of that. If we had a stronger system from the beginning of Liberia, we probably would not have even had coup d'etat. We would have been saved from that. So there's a need for us to have this continuous dialogue. And like somebody said, bring more experienced historians on here, because we are interpreting what we read differently.
Thank you. And again, we're looking for sponsorship for this program. That we said we'll have several series. This is not just going to end. And I want to applaud you all for taking up time of your busy schedule. Again, help support the platform until we can get sponsored. You see the Cash app or the Zelle on there. I can start with the panelists on here. Just drop in a little something, and just to help support the platform, the maintenance of the station, the whole 9 yards. Mrs. Hardy.
Well, I would say that I don't think that what we are going through is solely on a basis. It's solely because of our governance and our structure. It's also added onto that is also the rhetoric of hate, and the hate started way back, where Congo will call a countryman he also call the government names. So the name call started way back. That's part of what has hit us, and part of what has so divided. And that is why when 1980 came, the Federal Congo woman born soldier and little woman born rogue. So, and that is the same continuation, like some of the panelists said here. They see it as political. They're thinking it's political rhetoric, but that is what is driving us deeply, because you're thinking there's political rhetoric, you are denigrating one side of your culture, and that's sinking deep into the descendants of that culture. So it's not just political rhetoric, it's spewing hate. Until we see it as spewing hate among each other and dividing us, then we are going nowhere. And again, I look forward to the historians coming on at the basis for Liberia.
Thank you.
At this have to finish. Which at this time, to me, it's irrelevant, because we are looking towards the future and we are not past. The only reason why we are even talking about it, and
Vera,
like last week, is
my time is up, Vera. Thank you so much. My time is up. Thank you. Letty Brooks Roberts.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Garley. I want to say thank you to the panelists. Great conversation. The intention is great, and we appreciate it. We just, like I said, need to add few historians, just so that we have a solid foundation, and then we can talk about the actual divide. But Mr. Garley, my point here is the Tonga people mistreated the indigenous people, and when they fought back, we got rid of the Tonga people, right? So then you get rid of the Tonga people, and the country people take over, and they do worse than the Tonga people. So that's the conversation we need to have. How come you wanted to go to school? We send you to school now, and what do you learn? You're not giving it back to the people that are less fortunate. So we are going backwards rather than forward. Thank you for your time. Thank you to our audience. Have a great evening.
Thank you. The voice of Letty Brooks Roberts, the administrator here at British Radio Africa. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Well, folks, that's all the time we have to be with you. God willing, will be a Wednesday night, same time, same place. Father God, I want to give you praise, want to thank you, magnify your name for giving us the strength. And folks, with that said, this has been yours truly, the brother who doesn't eat iron, but he's definitely stronger than a lion. The medicine of the microphone, the golden voice of Liberia, Africa's media, doobie doo extraordinaire. Ashford the giant, and now you know me, Garley. Have a good night.